tour and whatnot. So,
sure.
Yeah.
So my name is Antoine Vincent. I'm the fifth generation of winemaker at Château Fuissé, which is a family-owned property which was bought by my great-great-grandfather in 1852. So it's a long story about wine and from Pouilly Fuissé in the Vincent family. My great-grandfather was actually the founder of the Pouilly Fuissé appellation in 1929, so it's 80 years ago. The estate is around 33 hectares, mainly Pouilly Fuissé appellation, 23 hectares of Pouilly Fuissé, 7 hectares of Saint-Véran appellation, and 2.5 hectares of Macro village. So Pouilly Fuissé appellation is, of course, one of our major production inside this property. We make a specific vinification according to the villages. There is no Premier Cru and Grand Cru, as you know, in the Pouilly Fuissé appellation. However, we make specific selections on terroir, and we have 3 different monopoles. Les Combettes, which means Little Valley, which is very mineral soils in Fuissé that we vinify in old barrels only to preserve the freshness. Le Clos, which is just behind the chateau, which means vineyards surrounded by walls, which is a clear limestone soil, for which we can afford to make partly new oak, partly old barrels vinification. And Les Brûlés, which means burnt by the sun, of course, due to the south exposure, which is a very deep soils, for which we can afford to make 100% new oak fermentation. So with these three wines, you understand very easily our philosophy of the winemaking at Château Fuissé. So beside this property, family property owned, we care with family estates, which are sold under the Vincent names, which are localized in the north part of the Pouilly Fuissé appellation. Château Fuissé is in Fuissé, and the Vincent brands are localized in the village of Vergisson, which is higher in altitude, and on a village which is very choky. So for these wines, which are Pouilly Fuissé Marie Antoinette is actually the name of my grandmothers, and for the JJ Vincent wine Bourgogne Blanc, we sort the wines from these locations, which are more on the minerality than the Château Fuissé, which are more on the bodiness.
Okay, yesterday we tasted through the 2007s.
Yeah.
I asked you to describe the vintage for me, and if you could just go back through that a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah. So the 07 vintage was an amazing vintage because it was, of course, a very speeding vintage, an early vintage, since the deburst and the blossoming occurred 1 month earlier than usual. So that's to say, in May we were doing the same work that we used to do in June. So all the plants were growing very fast. So we had to do lots of the same job at the same time. So it was quite in a hurry in the fields. So at this period, that's to say the blossoming, which was end of May, we were expecting to be harvesting mid-August. However, the problem is that we get not so good conditions in July. August in July, but I think from 15th of August the weather get better, cool but better, and that's why we get a good maturation, and we preserved the freshness on the grapes. So we waited until the 8th of September to start picking the Chardonnay grapes. So the balance of these wines is more on the mineral side. So it's a very elegant vintage to my mind. It's a very mineral, pure, clean vintage that represents the elegance of our terroir. And if you take the different terroirs together, you really see the typicity of each terroir due to this very cleanliness and purity.
Yeah, they were definitely quite distinct. So could you also maybe just tell us, again, like I asked Nicholas a second ago, is there anything new or different? You've redone the packaging and whatnot over the last couple of years with the JJ Vincent label. Yeah. Anything else we might be expecting for you, or anything that's new or different?
Well, so...
Or are you just kind of doing it, just trying to improve quality and whatnot?
We try to make things little by little. Of course, we built a new cellar in 03 to be very efficient in terms of quality of harvesting and picking and pressing the grapes and sorting the grapes. Now we moved on to the packaging. Of course, we changed a little bit of the labels to make them more approachable, understandable to consumers. So that's why we have very clear ID on the front label, what is inside the wines, which is Pouilly-Ficé Marie Antoinette 07 Chardonnay grape. So you understand where it comes from, what is it, where it is, and which vintage it is, of course, very easily. In the future, most of the work we're going to improve will be, of course, to intensify the work in the fields, to stay closer to the soils, to get the more and more expression on the soils, of course, to reduce the strength of the young vines by planting weeds, so carrying more, staying closer to the terroir. That's my key point.
Okay. Do you have a favorite wine from 2007, or something you prefer to drink?
Well, I like the balance of the Château Fuissé Tête de Cru, to my mind. It's a very nice wine for the Chateau wines because it's very representative of this diversity of soils we have at the Chateau. And the Pouilly-Ficé Marie Antoinette as well, which is very close to terroir, which is more the minerality that enhances this, which is enhanced by the 2007 vintage.
Okay, great.
Merci.
Thank you.